Hi, Mom, Pop, and the rest of the gang. Right now I'm sitting in my, I call it my office here at school, and the time is about 4 o'clock in the morning. This is June the 24th, and I must admit that this tape is a little bit delayed in its making. One time earlier I sat down and recorded nearly the full tape before realizing that I was on the wrong speed and that you wouldn't be able to pick it up at home. So if that's any form of a reason, even though it isn't an excuse, why, you can take it for what it's worth. Needless to say, I enjoyed the last tape I received, and from all that's going on around home, I don't see how you can use the excuse that you don't have anything to say in trying to explain away why you don't send more tapes. It certainly became evident on the last tape that Muriel's wedding is occupying most of the thinking at this time. I think that this is, well, I'll put it this way, I'm sorry that I'm not around to participate in some of this pre-ceremonial excitement. But more than that, I'm sorry that I won't be there to participate in the final outcome of it all. The only word of uncalled for advice that I can give as one who is looking at the whole affair from, so to speak, an outside position is that you should get all your worrying and fussing done now, so that by the time the wedding day does arrive, why, you'll be able to sit back and really enjoy it. It isn't too often that you see this done, and I think it's probably, or at least partially, the result of getting too engrossed in the mechanics and details of it. I think I would shoot for getting all that pretty much out of the way beforehand. From other comments on the tape, I think one of the prime little tasks that I would direct myself towards would be simply getting Pop to the wedding on time. It seems you're running the same old course, Pop, and you know, this is one time when you just can't lose your way or come a little bit late. Not that I'm really worried about it. In other regards, I get the impression that the place is fairly lively. Also, the business at the track for Mom and Dad here is, I hope it doesn't become too much of a habit. You know, winning, I would say, is more the exception than the rule, and I don't expect too much argument there. If you're ahead now, why, maybe retiring for the season would be advisable in terms of being able to say that you came out ahead this year. Regarding the racehorse candy spots, I had the opportunity to watch both the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont Stakes, but I guess these were the two races I shouldn't have seen. He just simply got outrun by that Chateauguay. I've never seen a horse with such explosive oomph left when, after running a mile and a quarter, that darn Chateauguay. And if I wasn't mistaken, in the Belmont Stakes, that horse just clearly changed his pace when he made his dash for the front. I mean, it was pretty hard to tell, but he just runs like a dog. He lowers his head and his ears are back, and he just has to be staggering his pace somewhat. Though I guess this is something they rarely do. And Mom, it sounds as though you're going to have your own little racetrack around the house, trying to keep up with her. And I guess she's not on twos yet, but they can get around fairly quickly on all fours, as I'm sure you're well aware. Of all those who had something to say on the last tape, I think the prize for clarity of expression, etc., would have to go to Pete, who, I don't know whether you were aware of it at the time or not, but he was really talking up a blue streak into this microphone. And by the way, if Jack is around, I could mention to him that the speeds on the tape recorders are, he's correct, they are different, but the difference on my end is almost negligible, and it certainly will cause no concern. And Brome, I'm glad you said as much as you did on the last tape. It seems that in times past that I haven't heard that much from you, but I got a big bang out of the things you had to say, particularly the auction box, which was described in in some detail. And I quite agree that that was a real keen purchase. And I might say also that regarding the yucca plants, I trust that you're well aware of the penalty that one can incur by picking or cutting up these plants. And I don't know, I've never gotten it from anyone officially, but I'm under the impression that because of their relative paucity, these plants are protected by law, and that if one finds, or say a ranger or park manager finds these in your possession, you're actually subject to some fine. And about the publication that I mentioned in that, I guess, my last letter, you needn't look around for it. I can send you a copy of it. It appeared in a journal, medical journal, entitled Circulation Research. That is in February this year. As you know, the authors and whatnot are given reprints by the publisher, and I'll just send one of these in an envelope to you. Not that it's, really that significant a paper or anything, but it might be of interest to you. It was also particularly good to hear from you, Tom. I can tell the way you talk, in fact, that you're getting pretty excited as the day draws near. But I think the comments I made earlier, if you heard them, pertain also to your getting all the worrying out of the way beforehand, so that you of all people can really enjoy the wedding, since you know this is in fact your day, or yours and Jim's. Last weekend I was up in, or I was in another little town here in Texas at the wedding of a good friend of mine, and well, I know the girl he married also, and if I had anything to say about this wedding as being anything in any way different from other weddings I've seen, I would say that they were really, I guess you'd say, relaxed and in a position to enjoy what was going on around them. I know that they're both fairly organized people, and everything else was fairly well managed, but it was distinctly obvious that they had no concern other than for each other, and this made, I think, for a very attractive wedding, and I'm sure it was particularly enjoyable as a ceremony in their eyes as well. Well, I'd like to have something to say to, or something to say in answer to Anita and Fred and Max and Loretta, but somehow I don't recall having heard anything from them on the last tape, so all I can say is, well, I hope you're all doing okay, etc. I think that I expressed my joy about Max and Loretta's recent blessing in the letter, so I needn't go into that. I guess you are interested in hearing a little bit about what I'm up to now, and I can start out by saying, first of all, that exams are over and all the scores are in, and not hearing anything from them, I assume I did all right. My own feeling is, as usual, somewhat less than satisfying, and in this series of exams I have particular reason to be concerned, in that the types of questions they asked were good questions, but nevertheless not designed for a person with my preparation. By that I mean by splitting my sophomore courses into 2 years. There are 2 of the major courses I have not had, and the questions were written with the expectation that everyone had them, which is true for the majority. Well, I was able to answer and write about each, but nevertheless the things I had to say I know did not reflect the breadth of understanding that would be possible had I, studied these same diseases, etc., from 2 more angles, which is true for the rest of the class. And then 2, the way I take exams are, it simply works this way. They give me a list of pages to answer in the booklets that they hand out. These one day's test consists of 25 pages, and so I just answer the pages that they suggest. Well, this time they made a mistake and gave me the wrong numbers, it wasn't a case of missing some I should have answered, but they gave me ones that I should not have answered, and I proceeded to answer them anyway, and just used up time in that manner, which I think hurt me some, but some didn't make that much difference, I guess, in the long run. I guess the next thing to point out is that I'm no longer living at the Phi Chi house, that is at the fraternity house. Last week I moved in with Brian Lowry, who you will all meet later this summer. He is the fellow who I've spent Christmases and Thanksgivings with. His family, and that is all his brothers, I guess he has 4 of them now, all live just outside of Houston, as I believe I mentioned one time earlier. He's the relatively tall, red-haired fellow that I described. We're now living in the apartment that he occupied during the past year, and it's costing us $70 a month furnished, and its location is fairly desirable, being only a matter of 6 minutes from school and less than that to the village, it's called, which is located between the apartment and school. In the village they have all necessary shops and everything else that anyone would ever need. We got sort of gung-ho in terms of fixing up the apartment, and so we proceeded to paint and wax floors and do things like that, which we both enjoy doing, particularly as an escape, you might say, from the more sedentary activities that we get too much of. We also have great designs on building furniture for the apartment. Well, what this consists of right now is a couch, which we have most of the materials for, and now we have to put them together. Brian has a number of deer skin, or deer hides, I guess you'd say. These are not deer skins, with fur and all that stuff on them, but rather the leather itself, which has been tanned and fixed up, so it's very soft and well, it looks like a chamois almost, and it's the same feeling and so forth. And he has about 13 of these things, and we're going to use those to upholster the cushions that will sit on top of a rather rustic oak frame, and then we'll make some sort of back for the thing, which is removable, these studio couch-like affairs. It should be a fairly attractive piece when we get done, and if we get the time, we'll build night tables and a coffee table to go with it. The address of the apartment is, let's see, heck, I can't even remember what it is. Doesn't matter anyway. But the phone number over there is Mohawk. That's MO 53601. And if ever you're trying to call me, I will be at that number between say 6:30 and 9 in the evening, or between about 4 and 7:30 in the AM. Well, I'll continue this on the other side since I'm about off the reel. The reason for my describing such funny hours leads me to mention this again, the sleeping problem that I have, and it also prompts me to make some requests of the whole family in terms of, you might say, recording some memories or feelings, sensations, etc. that you might have had or might remember others in the family as having, and to make this meaningful, I will tell you a little bit about this disorder that I seem to have. First of all, the disease is known as narcolepsy, and it is viewed as being a disturbance or disorder of sleep, and that's as simple as it is. Now, by that statement, more is implicit than explicit, and I think this will become obvious in a few moments. Well, there are a number of disorders of sleep that are, in other words, classified as disorders of sleep, and I won't go into all that, but suffice it to say that narcolepsy is simply an exaggeration of a normal phenomenon, which is going to sleep, you might say. It's also very highly correlated with another condition known as cataplexy. This I've mentioned to you, Mom, and I will describe it again. Cataplexy is a momentary loss, you might say, of all somatic sensation, and by that I'm referring to, well, the terms may mean something that, such as proprioception, touch, and all that. A simple way of looking at this condition of cataplexy is that your body simply goes to sleep, and not your mind. That is to say, you are fully conscious and aware of your condition, but you are completely and totally unable to move or utter a sound. And this is a very sudden phenomenon, and it's usually over in a matter of seconds. It usually lasts less than a minute, that is. Well, these cataplectic attacks now are precipitated by emotional stimulation, and the most commonly cited example is that of laughter, when you suddenly break out in response to a joke or an idea or something like that, and you feel that your knees just disappear from under you, and you feel like you could fall down until, maybe this just happens at the momentarily. This is a manifestation of this phenomenon of cataplexy. And this is known or seen to occur quite frequently in people who suffer also from narcolepsy. They speak therefore of a narcoleptic cataplectic syndrome. These are both very rare birds, needless to say, and chances of your having heard too much about them before are rather slim, I'm sure. However, I've recently, well, excuse me, I should mention something about narcolepsy too. It is a condition, or I'll put it this way, you know it's going to sleep. As I said, it's an exaggeration of this going to sleep process. And it is precipitated by the situations which normally put people to sleep. And that's why it's pretty hard to differentiate this thing. That is, after a big meal, or when doing something particularly boring, or, unstimulating, driving a car as an example. These are situations that put a lot of people to sleep, people who are entirely normal. Well, the person with narcolepsy is likewise put to sleep by these situations, but there's a difference here in that the narcoleptic individual is unable to avoid sleep under these conditions. And this is a fairly this is a funny thing. I mean, I know what that means, and I know that I've driven hundreds of miles, etc., when I've been dog tired, etc. And therefore, to think of sleep as being with your head on a pillow sawing logs, this is not the only form, shall we say, of sleep. Rather, existing in a state of a twilight zone, say, where you're responsive and you can do things, you can see things, but they somehow don't mean anything. This is what I would also call a form of sleep, and I know that I've spent long hours in this, quote, twilight zone, coming in, going out of it, etc., etc. This is, I think, more closely akin to what I would call this narcoleptic type of sleep. And this is something that, as I say, cannot be avoided. Oh, momentarily, yes, you can do this, you can do that, stand on your head, or get out and walk in the cold air, or whatever you want to do. And this will have a momentary influence, but little else. Well, these conditions now, I've come to learn, have a very definite hereditary basis, particularly that of narcolepsy. And in fact, in the last paper I read, there has been it has been shown that of nearly 1/3 of the 400 cases that were studied, nearly 1/3 of these did have, of the patients, of these 400 patients studied, there was another individual in the family who likewise was influenced in some way by these two forms of abnormal sleep that I've mentioned. Now, this means that 2/3 of the majority of patients don't have family history, or positive family history. But nevertheless, it certainly is 1/3 is a high enough incident to make me wonder seriously if there is not perhaps a slight manifestation of these things in others in the family, or perhaps in grandparents or uncles, aunts, etc. Well, I've asked the question before, and it's been a fairly negative reply that I've received, that is, well, so-and-so in the family could sleep well, etc., etc. But I would entreat you individually now, and that goes for all of you, to think back about places and whatnot that you have gone to sleep, and particularly when you've gone to sleep in an abnormal situation, that is, under a situation which is clearly not predisposing to sleep. Now, by this I'm referring to anything at a time of, say, of otherwise excitement, say at a ball game or while watching a horse race or something of this sort. Has there ever been a tendency just to doze off, not go to sleep and be out for a couple of hours as we usually think of it, but just to drop off momentarily and realize suddenly that you've woken up from something, never realizing that you had gone to sleep? You see, this is the funny thing about these narcoleptic attacks. They, in a sense, are so sudden in going in and out of sleep that it's always surprised me that I can tell when I'm waking up, but I can never tell when I'm going to sleep. And that's another characteristic that might mean something. Well, if you guys would think about this when I get home later in the summer, I'll talk about it more and see if we can't uncover anything more relative to this condition in our family, at any rate. If it means anything, I could say that this disease is one that is, well, I've said it's, well, for Pop, I could say it's a disease sui generis. This is, if my interpretation is correct, there is no, so to speak, cause, or it is without genesis in the person who suffers from it. And this has meaning when you say, well, what other kind of disease is there? And the answer to that would be, well, there are diseases that are infectious. There are diseases that are, disorders, say, of the anatomy in the body. If you have a bum heart or a valve or something, then you have a disease of a certain sort, you see. Well, this one, or this disease, is something that is genetically built into you, and there it is, and there's just nothing you can do to get it out of you because it's in every little cell in your body. Luckily, this disease is responsive, very responsive to certain drug therapy, and of course that's what I'm on right now. It's a funny thing. I know after exams I stopped taking the pills for a little while, and boy, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, I could sleep for 18 hours a day, which I did the other day, and just never bat an eye. Well, if I can keep the thing in balance and whatnot, I don't see why it should cause any problem for me later on. But if there are others in the family who are likewise have, say, mild symptoms of this disorder, why, it would behoove us to uncover this and take the necessary steps to avoid any problems that might result therefrom. The disease is not in any way related to any other disorder that we can think of. I mean, say it isn't related to shortening of the lifespan or predisposition to any other problems. In fact, in many ways, I still regard it as being an advantage to the person who has it. And that, I mean, I can still just go to sleep anytime I want. Well, I mean, that's a pretty long spiel about something that may not have too much meaning, but nevertheless I'm kind of interested in it now, particularly because of the relation of this disease to certain other phenomena of a psychologic nature. And in this regard, I could mention two more related disorders of sleep, which are occasionally related to narcolepsy. And these disorders come under, well, the first is known as a hypnagogic hallucination, and by that is meant that when you're just going to sleep or when you're just waking up, you experience these hallucinations. They may be very colorful, they may be very vivid, or they may be quite terrifying. And if anyone in the family has ever experienced this, particularly, again, I say, just at the time when you're dozing off to sleep or in the morning, when you're waking up, this would be worth noting. And the second disorder in this relation would be what is known as a sleep paralysis. And this is likewise it's an attack, we could say, that strikes when just going to sleep or when just waking up. And what it consists of is a total inability to move or to, again, say anything or in any way bring yourself out of it, though you're fully awake and aware of what's going on. And this usually doesn't last very long, and it's again sort of a separation of the mind and the body in terms of being asleep in the body but not in the mind. Well, this is another phenomenon that may have been experienced by someone in the family, and if they could recall or think of it, then make note of it, how often, when, etc., when it first happened, and all the rest of the questions you imagine you can dream up yourself. But at any rate, this whole business is, as I say, related to psychological phenomena, wherein the dreams that a person can experience when, and this is a narcoleptic individual now, wherein he can dissociate, or oftentimes has his mind and body dissociated. He, in a sense, is dreaming while seemingly asleep, though, as I said, the mind may be very much awake, and yet it incorporates certain environmental stimuli into the dream at hand. And this is, in a sense, the same thing that goes on in certain types of hallucinations, wherein people take external phenomena and integrate them into their own dreams, fantasies, and whatnot, and respond then to these external stimuli in such a way that they have distorted or misinterpreted these external happenings. Well, these people are psychologically disturbed. In the case of the narcoleptic individual, he does this and yet can be awakened or snapped out of this phase, you might say, and there is nothing in the world wrong with him. Rather, he can, so to speak, enter and return from these hallucinatory reveries, if you want to put it that way, and that's why I'm kind of interested in learning all I can about this. Knowing the family history, as you can see, is of considerable importance. Well, I sort of used up the whole side of a tape on that, but maybe it'll be worth it in the long run. Uh, I think that otherwise, by me, things are going real well, and I'm busily now engaged in the things I mentioned in an earlier tape, research and school, primarily. Uh, since I'm about off this tape, I will say goodbye and hope that you'll get together and put together another tape and send it down. So, till then, take care of yourselves and goodbye.